We're going to talk about the most mysterious law in the Torah. Parshat Chukat opens with one of the most baffling commandments in the Torah, which is the red heifer, the mitzvah of the red heifer, the para adumah, which is described in the verse in Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. And the Torah tells us that we have to take a perfect red cow, which has never been yoked, and it has to be slaughtered outside the camp, and its ashes used to purify those who have come into contact with the dead. I don't mean like they had a seance with a Ouija board. I mean actual physical contact with the dead. And here's the twist. Whoever prepares the ashes becomes impure in the process of creating something that purifies others. So it's really the ultimate paradox. The purifier becomes impure. The impure becomes pure. Even King Solomon, who we call the wisest of all men, the wisest man who ever lived, said, I thought I could become wise, but it is far from me. And this is from a verse in chapter 7, verse 23 in Ecclesiastes, otherwise known as Kohelet, where the section is, a series of descriptions of the limits of human understanding. So even King Solomon couldn't understand this, then what are we supposed to do with it? And we see that Chazal say, it's brought down in Bamidbar Rabbah, in the Medrash, and in Yalkut Shimoni, they say that he was specifically referring to this mitzvah as the prime example of a divine law that defies human logic. So what do we do with a commandment that even the wisest among us cannot fully understand? And more importantly, what do Noahides have to do with this? Right? Noahides are not commanded to bring such sacrifices. So what can they learn from this? There's a deeper spiritual principle at work here, which is that Hashem places obstacles in our path, not to block us, but to build us. These difficulties are not divine accidents. They are carefully calibrated challenges meant to condition us for spiritual growth. Think about all the challenges that you face in life. Every single one of them bears this description. Just like resistance strengthens a muscle, spiritual obstacles strengthen the soul when they are approached with the right mindset. Because often we interpret challenges and hardships as a call to retreat, to withdraw, to protect ourselves, to stay small. But in truth, these moments are a divine invitation to step up and to advance with more grit and more determination. So this is a very profound teaching here. Because in life, we often face moments that make no sense to us. A loved one gets sick. A relationship shatters unexpectedly. You lose your job for doing the right thing. And we cry out. Why? What's the reason? What does God want from me? So the red heifer tells us sometimes there's no reason you can grasp. But that doesn't mean there's no purpose here. The Torah isn't just a book of laws. It's a book of spiritual formation. And sometimes formation requires fire. As the expression goes, the finest steel must go through the hottest fires. Life's challenges, especially those that seem irrational, undeserved, unfair, those things shape us. They humble us. They purify us. We see a verse in Psalms chapter 34, verse 19. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Not because pain is holy in and of itself, but because pain opens a place in us that comfort cannot, especially if we are receptive enough to understand that the pain is meaningful and carries a message for us. Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch explains that this chatat, this purifying sin offering of the red heifer, elevates man with his whole nature, his transient physical powers, and his eternal moral essence into the eternal sphere of the one God. He writes the following thing, quote, "Do not be misled by the sight of corpses and of death. Become free, become immortal, not despite, but along with all those aspects of your existence that are mortal and physically fettered. Be the immortal master of your mortal body. In the midst of impurity, preserve your purity." In other words, we're not supposed to run away from the difficulties of this world. We're supposed to become transformed by them. We're supposed to take that opportunity. Just like the par aduma, just like the red heifer atones for sin, or rather purifies a person from the contamination of coming into the contact with the dead. The tough stuff in life purifies us from the contamination of our old selves and our old ideas. Chazal, both in revealed areas and also in the Zohar, teach that the para aduma atones for the sin of the golden calf. It's one of the most cataclysmic and awful episodes that we have in the Torah. Specifically because what's the worst sin in the Torah if it's not avodah zarah, idol worship, the idea that there's anything other than Hashem running this world? And it's so incredible when we think that the same generation that heard the voice of Hashem at Sinai, the most direct revelation in history to the greatest number of people, same people lost patience and turned to a golden image. This, they said, is your God. What? How is that even possible? How is it possible to lose that idea so quickly? But it is. The red heifer is a spiritual counterweight to that moment. It reminds us that the world is not run by chaotic forces, that Hashem is one, not a fragmented collection of powers, that true atonement doesn't come from understanding, but from return. In this way, the para aduma, the red heifer, is about realignment, bringing us back to center after we've gotten lost in the noise. The endless scroll of social media, influencer culture, viral outrage, Algorithms reward extremity. But it's not just that. We're bombarded with opinions, with trends, with content. And in the clamor, it feels like the quiet voice of the soul gets drowned out. And of course, there's the good old fashioned noise that we have had in every generation, the town criers, the market squares, even loud family dinners. But the stakes are higher now because the volume never stops. If we're not careful, we forget how to listen inwardly at all. Now, here's the paradox. The red heifer not only purifies, it also signals the coming of the third temple. According to the Rambam, in Hilchot Para Aduma, chapter 1, halacha 1, and chapter 3, halacha 4, the ritual of Para Aduma was given to Moses at Sinai and will be resumed in the Messianic era. He recounts there the historical chain of 9 red heifers from the time of Moses to the Second Temple, and that the 10th will be brought by the Messiah. So what we find is that this deeply incomprehensible mitzvah is also a messianic signpost. The thing that you don't understand may be the very thing that leads you to redemption. Some of the hardest, most painful challenges, the ones we can't explain, give us new strength, new empathy, a sense of mission. It's not about explaining the pain. It's about growing from it. Man does not simply invent his mission, said Viktor Frankl. He detects it. The red heifer reminds us that the mystery is not a failure of the system. It's the system. It's the system itself. And think about someone recovering from deep loss. A spouse who loses a partner to cancer, God forbid. A soldier returning from war with PTSD. The path forward is clarity. It's courage. Over time, they begin to help others. Malala Yousafzai, after surviving a Taliban bullet at the age of 15, refused to retreat into fear. Instead, she used the attack as a catalyst. She co-authored a memoir. She addressed the United Nations. That's not the biggest honor anymore, but she also became the youngest Nobel Prize laureate as she built a global movement for girls' education. Or consider Bethany Hamilton, who was a teenage surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack, but then went on to shock the world by returning to professional surfing within 1 month. Her courage, her optimism led to a successful career, a best-selling memoir, and a film that inspired millions of people. And Viktor Frankl, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, who had a very successful 20-year career as a neurosurgeon, as a psychiatrist, before he was put into 5 different concentration camps, faced unfathomable suffering, lost most of his family, saw the absolute worst possible things. But from the ashes of the camps, he created a new form of therapy. Actually, he had been creating that before he went into the camps. But it became known, logotherapy, centering around the idea that meaning, not pleasure, not power, is what sustains us. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 12 million copies and continues to guide people in finding purpose amid hardship. And these stories show the red heifer principle in action. Pain that ends up purifying not just the self, but others. Now, you might ask, if the red heifer is not part of the 7 Noahide laws, what does it have to do with me? The answer is everything. Because what it reveals is the core spiritual truth of the Torah. You don't need full understanding to live with full devotion. As we see in the Psalms, chapter 19, verse 9, the statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. You don't need to be commanded in every ritual to live a life of meaning. And when the temple is rebuilt, we know what it says in Isaiah, that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. There's a future in which the deepest mysteries, even those we don't observe, will be made accessible. And we prepare for that world by living with faith, humility, and perseverance in this one. So no, you might not understand every detail. And no, you're not asked to. But you are invited into the mystery. And through that, into redemption. The red heifer doesn't ask you to grasp it. It asks you to grow through it. There's something every human being, whether B'nai Yisrael, B'nai Noach, can do. And that's why this mysterious cow is one of the Torah's most universal teachings.